There are stories Hollywood chooses to celebrate, and stories it buries beneath the shimmer of fame. For years, Selena Gomez stood beneath the brightest lights, her smile soft, her voice steady, her presence radiating the innocence of a girl who grew up too quickly under the gaze of millions. She became the face of a generation, a symbol of resilience wrapped in gentle elegance. But behind that delicate smile lived something far heavier, a truth shaped not by feuds she chose, but by battles she never asked for. Her rise to global fame made her a magnet for narratives written by strangers. Fans dissected her relationships. The media fueled comparisons. Social networks constructed feuds out of silence, glances, or breathless speculation. And beneath it all, Selena carried her own private storms. Lupus attacking her body, anxiety and depression shadowing her brightest days, and a world that demanded perfection even when she was fighting to stay afloat. Her fortune, soaring past $95 million, offered comfort but not peace, because no amount of wealth can quiet the noise of millions demanding pieces of your life. Inside her home during some of her darkest nights, the light through the windows fell faint and cold. Half-finished cups of tea, notebooks left open, a silence that felt too large for one person to hold. It was not scandal that consumed her. It was exhaustion, the kind that grows from years of being watched, judged, and misunderstood. So what is the truth behind her feuds, her fame, her falling apart? Not betrayal, not drama, but the quiet collapse of a young woman forced to live her pain in public. How does a heart so gentle survive a world determined to fracture it? Before the world dissected her every expression, before her name became a headline shaped by strangers, Selena Gomez was simply a girl with a fragile dream. Born in Texas in 1992, she was raised by a young mother who worked tirelessly to keep hope alive in their small household. From the beginning, Selena understood uncertainty, but she also understood passion, the kind that flickers quietly until someone gives it room to burn. Her first steps into acting came early, long before she understood the weight of fame. On children's television, her smile carried a brightness untouched by pressure. But the turning point arrived when she stepped into the world of Disney Channel. Wizards of Waverly Place transformed her not just into a star, but into a phenomenon. Teenagers across America saw themselves in her softness, her humor, her warmth. And with each passing episode, the world tightened its hold on her. Music followed, then arenas, then millions of voices singing her lyrics back to her, as though whispering pieces of their own hearts. Her debut albums climbed the charts. Her films drew massive audiences. She wasn't just successful, she was beloved, a symbol of relatability in an industry built on illusion. Her beauty was gentle, her energy humble, her presence grounding, and in her 20s, she became one of the most followed women on the planet, a position that shimmered with glory, yet hid a truth few could see. Because fame for Selena was both a crown and a burden, the applause reminded her of her worth. The silence afterward reminded her of her loneliness. Even at her brightest, she felt the first fractures forming beneath the surface. The pressure to grow up in front of millions, the judgment of every relationship, the impossibility of making mistakes in a world that refused to forgive them. She stood on stages bathed in white light, but behind the scenes, shadows gathered. Et derrière les projecteurs, un autre récit, plus fragile, plus sombre, commençait déjà à se dessiner. 3. As the world continued to adore her, the years leading up to Selena Gomez's breaking point grew heavier, quieter, and more fragile than anyone imagined. While the public saw success, platinum albums, red carpets, brand partnerships, she was fighting battles far more intimate. Her lupus diagnosis, made public in 2015, marked the beginning of a physical and emotional descent that fame could neither soften nor hide. Lupus is a silent thief. It steals strength in whispers, it bruises the body, drains energy, and turns simple days into uphill climbs. But the world didn't see the mornings when Selena couldn't get out of bed, the nights when pain pulsed through her joints like a quiet storm, the moments when her reflection felt like a stranger. Meanwhile, the internet had cast her into roles she never asked to play. The ex-girlfriend, the rival, the name dragged into dramas she didn't speak about, yet couldn't escape. Every post she made was dissected, every silence interpreted, every smile questioned. The feuds weren't wars she fought. They were stories projected onto her life by millions of eyes she could never close. Inside her house, the weight grew heavier. Curtains stayed drawn on certain days. Scripts lay untouched on the coffee table. Half-filled journals sat beside cups of cold tea. Friends said she became quieter, more contemplative. She retreated from the world not out of pride, but out of exhaustion. A life lived online leaves a little room to breathe offline. And as her physical health declined, her emotional resilience began to fracture. She sought treatment, stepped away from tours, and asked the world for understanding. But understanding rarely comes to a woman living inside a spotlight bright enough to erase her humanity. By 2016, the pressure had become unbearable. Her body faltered, her mind dimmed, her spirit wavered beneath the demand to stay strong. And yet the world kept watching, waiting for updates, for explanations, for narratives they could mold into their own versions of the truth. It was in these final years before her collapse that silence became both her refuge and her warning, a prelude to the moment when everything would finally break. The night everything fell apart for Selena Gomez did not come with spectacle. There were no flashing lights, no dramatic scenes, no cameras waiting outside her door. It arrived quietly, the way exhaustion often does, slipping into the corners of her life until even breathing felt like a burden she could no longer carry alone. It was late 2016 when those closest to her noticed the shift. Selena, who once filled rooms with soft laughter, began to move through her days like someone wrapped in invisible weight. Her lupus had intensified, battering her immune system. Depression pressed heavily against her chest. Anxiety gnawed at the edges of her thoughts, and the endless noise of the outside world. The rumors, the speculation, the fabricated feuds, blended into a storm she could not outrun. On the night her team intervened, her house was unusually still. A single lamp glowed in the living room. Her phone lay face down on the table, notifications buzzing unanswered. The air carried the faint scent of lavender, an attempt at calm that did little to soothe the tremor beneath her breathing. She sat on the floor near the window, knees pulled close, the city lights trembling through the glass like distant memories. Tears came quietly, not explosive, but exhausted. The kind that form when a person has tried too hard, for too long, to hold themselves together for everyone else. Friends arrived with gentle voices. Whispers drifted through the hallways. A decision had to be made. That same night, she agreed to enter a treatment facility, not out of weakness, but out of the courage required to step back from a world tearing pieces from her one headline at a time. In those first hours, her team shielded her from the media, understanding that a single photograph could turn her suffering into spectacle. News broke days later. Selena Gomez cancels tour. Selena enters treatment. The world responded with shock, curiosity, judgment, compassion, a collision of emotions that only deepened the fracture she was trying to heal. But what the world couldn't see was the quiet moment that defined that night. A young woman recognizing that silence had stopped being a refuge and had become a warning. Pourquoi tant de silence autour d'un homme si grand? Why does the world only hear the truth when a heart breaks loudly enough? 5. Recovery did not arrive like sunlight. It arrived slowly, hesitantly, a dim glow filtering through the quiet halls of the treatment facility where Selena Gomez retreated from the world. For weeks, she lived far from cameras, far from speculation, far from the noise that had turned her name into a battlefield. Her days became structured rituals, morning therapy, long reflective walks, moments of stillness that allowed her to listen to her own voice again. A voice drowned for years by the expectations of millions. Her net worth, already surpassing $95 million, was irrelevant here. In this space, fame offered no privilege. Fortune offered no shortcut. Healing demanded something far more difficult: honesty, vulnerability, and the courage to sift through the grief she had hidden beneath layers of professionalism and grace. She confronted her illness, her exhaustion, the pressure of being a public figure whose life had never truly belonged to her. She confronted the narratives built around her, the feuds, the gossip, the constant comparisons, all fabricated storms that tore at her sense of self. and she confronted the loneliness that fame had carved into her, the kind that fills even the largest rooms with cold stillness. When she finally returned home, the house felt different, quieter, gentler, almost protective. The curtains, once kept shut, were drawn open to let in morning light. A stack of journals sat by her bedside, pages filled with confessions written in shaky ink. She burned certain entries, not out of shame, but closure. Her team moved softly around her, careful not to disturb the fragile balance she was rebuilding. Friends visited in small numbers, offering presence instead of advice. And in the quiet comfort of her living room, she discovered a truth she had never allowed herself to feel before. She didn't have to be strong for everyone. She could simply be human. The world saw her transformation through Wolves, Lose You to Love Me, and her raw documentary, My Mind and Me. But those pieces, as vulnerable as they were, only revealed a fraction of the journey she carried. Because the real healing happened off camera in the unlit corners of her home, where she relearned how to breathe without fear. As her health stabilized, as her mind regained clarity, as her spirit found gentleness again, she began to reclaim pieces of her life the world had taken. Her narrative, her privacy, her identity. She created rare beauty, not as a brand, but as a manifesto, a declaration that perfection is a myth, and that beauty lives in the tenderness we show ourselves. Her philanthropic foundation grew. Her voice, once shaky beneath the weight of rumors, became steady, purposeful. Yet even with the light returning, certain mysteries linger. The unnamed people who drifted from her life after the breakdown. The silent moments she refuses to discuss publicly. The memories locked behind closed doors in her home, untouched and unspoken. These are not secrets born of scandal, but scars of survival. Fragments of a story she chooses to protect rather than expose. And perhaps that is the greatest truth she reclaimed. Healing is not the absence of wounds. It is learning which one deserve to remain privat. Cette maison semble encore retenir son souffle, comme si elle protégeait les souvenirs d'une âme revenue des ténèbres. In the years following her collapse, Selena Gomez did not return to the world as the girl it once believed it owned. She returned as a woman who had walked through fire and emerged not untouched, but transformed. Her smile, once polished for cameras, carries a softness now, the kind born from surviving storms no one else could see. The fame remains, the fortune grows, the spotlight still follows her. But none of it defines her anymore. What defines her is the quiet strength that came afterward, the honesty she uses as armor, the gentleness she protects like a fragile flame. Her life is no longer a narrative controlled by strangers. It is a story she writes in her own time, in her own voice, sometimes trembling, sometimes steady, always true. She continues to speak about mental health not as a celebrity, but as someone who has lived its sharpest edges. She advocates for kindness, not because it is fashionable, but because she knows the brutality of a world without it. Her art is different now, slower, deeper, rawer, shaped by the silence she once feared. So what remains of the girl who nearly broke beneath the weight of fame? A woman who learned to rise in the quiet, a survivor who carries her truth gently, not loudly. A reminder that falling apart is not the end. It is the beginning of knowing oneself without illusion. And in the final hush of her story, one truth echoes. Le silence ne tue pas la mémoire, il la purifie. Silence does not kill memory. It purifies it. In that purified silence, Selena Gomez stands not as a symbol of collapse, but as the echo of a life reclaimed.